The cloud is just somebody else's computer.
Yeah, we're just running it for you.
Who would have thought that dedicating your life to being a Flash programmer would result in you having absolutely no job opportunities of any kind? Choose your words carefully. This is a family program.
Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast.
All right, welcome everybody. I am here today with the incomparable, although wearing a different hat today, Chris Allen.
I have way too many hats. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Matt. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like I always see you in like what is it, a bowler hat? Is that your? You
Yeah,
have
no,
like
that
one
one's
standard.
yeah, that one's a pork pie hat actually, for if
Ah,
you want to get technical about these things. Yeah, but
I,
yeah,
I'm not as most people know at this point. I only wear baseball hats, so I'm not a sophisticated hat wearer. But that's okay. Well, thank you for being here. Before we get started, I don't want to tell your origin story in a way that is incorrect or too correct, as the case may be. So, can you give us, for those who don't know you and don't know Red Five, a couple minutes of who are you, how did we get here, and what's happening?
yeah, no problem. I guess it depends on how far back you want to go. Yeah, I'm sure you don't want my whole life story, but um,
I mean, all the way back to conception is a long one. So
yeah,
wherever you
yeah,
feel like
exactly.
starting.
Well, I went to school for music, believe it or not. So I'm a trained musician. Went to Berklee College of Music, and it turned out to my career in jazz was not as lucrative as my hobby of doing computer science and building things. So that kind of took off in an interesting way. And actually, it started out as with me. So I ended up working for the lab of computer science at the MGH, or Mass General Hospital here in Boston, and we were working on this was during the early 2000s, right? Like, and working on a video chat application for nurses and doctors, and them to be able to communicate with their patients, kind of an early telemedicine application, if you will. And the only real way to pull this off at the time was with Flash. And so I got pretty heavily into Flash development. And then it turned out that the only way to really do video streaming in and out of Flash at the time was the Flash communication server. And that thing came with a serious, hefty price tag, right? I think Adobe wanted 50,000 per CPU you run the thing on. Um, and that was like, we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what is this protocol that they're doing? Um, how can we maybe create something that's open source and a lot cheaper because it would be open source, right? And so a group of guys and me actually were on this open source Flash list together, like just email going back and forth, and we said, all right, let's step up, let's figure this thing out. And it turned out the protocol wasn't even encrypted or anything, so you could see it with Wireshark pretty clearly. A lot of the stuff was AMF, which was already figured out by another group, kind of this messaging layer. And so we'd start filling in the pieces and then crack the code essentially with a black box reverse engineer of it. And that was the inception of Rev5, the open source project, which became a alternative to the Flash communication server. For some reason, probably because I'm a musician, I don't mind being on stage and like talking to people and everything else. So I ended up kind of being the front, spokesman of the organization, or the loosely formed, you know, uh, group of developers, and started speaking at conferences, and then just kind of accelerated from there, where there was such a demand for doing custom work around this product we built that we ended up quitting our day jobs, creating a company around it. And so that was the inception of it. We started the company first iteration, it was 2007, and then I guess fast forward many years into the future, Flash died off, right? It kind of became banned from browsers and everything like that. And we're like, rather than just contributing everything as open source, we saw these use cases that needed to be solved that, the standard web stuff wasn't doing. Scalable real time video streaming for a variety of use cases just wasn't being met. So we decided to figure out how to hack WebRTC and make it work at its scale and kind of do one to many in real time. figured out how to get that, made a pro product, raised some money, kind of did a reiteration of the company, and that's kind of where we're at today. Started out with a licensed product, and then kind of more recently launched a SaaS model, or platform as a service model.
Also, who would have thought that dedicating your life to being a Flash programmer eventually would result in you having absolutely no job opportunities of any kind? It seems like it would never go away, at least where I sat.
It was
And then,
yeah, it was crazy, but I think that's true with technology in general. Is you can't rest on any one like technology for too long, because I mean that's the whole point. It's always changing, right? That's the one
sure,
guarantee you have in technology, is it's always going to be changing. And we're known for WebRTC, although like man, lately it's all about MOQ, right, or media over QUIC, and that's that I do believe that's the future of the next iteration, if you will, of the real time video streaming on the web. So.
awesome. Well, I want to circle back to mock,
Mhm.
because I think that's super interesting. I mean, it's obviously the top of everybody's minds right now, so I think uh, we'll probably end up talking a lot about that. But um, before we get there, you mentioned that evolution of software product to application as a service, streaming as a service. Now you have Red 5 Cloud.
Mhm.
Was that a natural transition, or was there like a eureka moment? Like how did we get from we're a software company to we operate a service?
I mean, I think it's just everybody was going there, and we kind of needed to do it, right? I mean, it's just otherwise, it's just expected. But our whole like basis in on-prem deployments and stuff like that is still super valuable. We have a lot of customers that um, absolutely will not use a SaaS product, right? And then there's arguments like the latest thing from the CEO of NVIDIA, right? He was like saying that, okay, now SaaS is dead because of AI, right? So there's always these iterations. I don't know if Jensen's right about that, but
Yeah,
I think I think the SaaS companies that are just doing something that's maybe a little bit too ridiculously simple, yeah, those are going to fade out. But something seriously hard like what we do with video delivery, I don't think that that's going to be replaced with AI very quickly. You know what I mean? But anyway, I sort of digress from the question. Yeah, it was a natural evolution, although super hard to do because look, we've gone through a couple of these transitions. Number one, moving from a consulting company where you're a product company, that was ridiculously hard, and more so than we had anticipated. And I think that's anybody who starts a company, I think, kind of goes through that. They think it's going to be easy, and then they realize how freaking hard it is, and then all of a sudden you're in it, and then you're like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to keep going, right? And I think the same transition from a software licensing product to a SaaS, where you have to keep it on all the time, similar growing pains that go into that, right? And
yeah,
I guess change. I guess this is the theme of the program today, right? Change is inevitable, and you just got to keep rolling with those changes and learning from it and adapting. And I think we've done a pretty decent job of that. And yeah, and just now, I mean, I think we're finally at a point where I'm actually happy with the Rev 5 Cloud product.
yeah.
Um, I think, but I think that's the way you want to do it. You never want to launch something when you're like totally happy with it, because then you're probably too late, right?
Yeah, I think somebody's quote is like, if you're not embarrassed by what you by the first thing you ship, you waited too long. Which I think is fair. And going back to the um, starting a business. I mean, I think Simon Sinek. I can't remember the name of the book, but I remember watching him do. I didn't read it, but I remember watching his tour promoting it, and I think it's called The Infinite Game. But the premise was
Mhm.
like, you can't win at business. Like there really is no scoreboard, there is no end game. Like the only goal is to keep playing,
Yeah,
right? Your
that's
goal
it.
is to just not be done playing. And I think that's why people, especially when they're first starting, they feel like the pivot. The first time they pivot, it's like this pseudo failure. I did something wrong. Now I have like I misread the market or something like that. When in reality, it's just like, if you're gonna start a business, it's gonna be here in 100 years.
Yeah.
When you zoom out
It's
far enough, it's just a series of pivots. That's all it is. Uh,
100%, man. Yeah.
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 So
There's probably, like, would you predict a company making the iPhone and like these, AirPod Pros or whatever, all these things coming from a guy's basement where he's just making like, you know, desktop computers? I mean, probably not, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, it's a whole series of pivots,
that's
and
it.
those are
Because the
normal.
goal,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
can't win. The goal is just to keep going. Uh, so
Well, you
even
could
if you
argue
got it
that
right,
is, yeah, but you could argue that is winning, right?
well,
Yeah,
that's the premise. Is like the
yeah,
only
yeah,
scoreboard is like, are you still playing?
yeah.
Yeah, the kind of it's the last man standing thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a problem with kind of black and white thinking in general, though, right? It's like it's a failure or it's a win, and it's like, generally speaking, it doesn't work that way, you know.
yeah, well, it's like that Chinese, whatever the Chinese proverb is, right? Like the family, uh, has a I forget how it starts, but it's like the one of the sons finds a horse on the road and comes home and says, "Father, father, look, I found this horse. Isn't this exciting? Isn't this great?" And he says, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Who knows?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, one of the sons is riding the horses and he falls off the horse and he breaks his arm. He goes, "Oh my
Isn't
god,
that
this is terrible!
unlucky?
This
Yeah.
is terrible." And he goes, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Too soon." And then 2 weeks later, the army comes, taking all able-bodied men to enlist in the army, and all this. Oh, he can't go because his arm is broken. Isn't this great news? Maybe yes, maybe no. We'll see. And I think that's the kind of moral of the story, especially with the like keep going. Like
Mhm.
most most people are probably closer to success than they think when they finally quit, and you just didn't give it enough time, uh, which sometimes is forced, right? You run out of runway, that's it, you're out of time. Um, but usually it's not anything more than like, hey, this thing probably would have worked. We just will never know because we pivoted first, or we ran out of money, or something changed, and sometimes it's just enough to keep going because everything looks terrible in the middle, which is the hard
Well,
part.
when you're dealing with it firsthand at the moment, the highs can be really high and the lows can be super low, or feel that way. And I've been, yeah, definitely. Maybe it's my personality, but I try to be kind of even keel. I'm not always good at it, right? But I mean, that's usually my approach. Try to take it in at first, like whatever the bad news is, or bad news, like you said, that could actually not be bad news. It depends on what it is.
Yeah.
And then just let it roll, and then see if you can look at it objectively after your emotions have passed. You know, but it's a tricky thing to
Yeah.
do, and none of this is easy.
No,
That's another saying. Otherwise, everybody would do it, right? That's the
that's
whole.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and the bad news part, you know, e- every bad news is the opportunity. Wherever the bad news is, that's where the opportunity lies, right? Like, I don't know that this happened, but at some point, presumably, somebody came into Steve Jobs' office and says, "Bad news, everybody's going to start spending more time on phones and less time on computers." Right?
He's like,
Bad news, Apple. Bad news, Apple computer.
yeah,
Uh, and he went, "Oh wow, I guess we're done."
yeah. That's
Or
exactly what
or
happened.
or do we, maybe make a phone? So yeah, it's hard. I mean, for those who haven't started a business or run a business, like it's hard, it's lonely, and I think to do it, you gotta have a certain gene or a certain spark inside you that is either contrarian or fiercely independent or a risk taker or all three.
Or just suck at working for other people too. That
Well,
helps.
that's it. Yeah. What's the expression? The definition of an entrepreneur is somebody who will work 70 hours a week so they don't have to work 40 hours a week. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. So with that in mind, then knowing the business is hard, um, uh, are people? You mentioned people that still really will never move to a cloud solution or a hosted solution. Is the best, like when I think of specifically people doing live sports or anything that's high visibility events that are really critical that everything's working in real time, my brain always thinks the best solution of those, and certainly what we've seen, is like some sort of hybrid in between solution where there's an on-prem component, or there's really good connectivity on-prem, dedicated fiber, something like that. And then on the flip side, you zoom out and you have this more elastic um, capacity, either in the form of a CDN or in the cloud. And yeah, is that sort of the gold standard today, or are actually people now just able to wing it and either do it all themselves or wing it and say, here, AWS, uh, it's all in the cloud?
Yeah, man. I think you're right that it's generally a hybrid thing, especially in the broadcast industry, that works the best, at least today, right? And that might change. I would never like say anything set in stone. I guess that's kind of the point of this conversation, right? But today, the best results tend to be, like you said, on-prem for maybe the encoding side and capturing what and packaging. But even that can be done in the cloud too, and successfully. We have customers doing that. Um, I think it's that flexibility that really matters. And then yes, like when you start getting this scale, it helps to have a service, unless you're a broadcaster that's your going to be your business. But I think when you start getting into that overlap, that's where you start getting into trouble, or you end up getting that business acquired, like MLB, BAMTech, ended up just, all right, we're done with doing that. Here it is, Disney, you take
Yeah.
it, and then, and we've seen that over and over again, like what Verizon did, EdgeCast, right? Or they bought EdgeCast and then sold it off again, and it became the Limelight
A geo.
Geo thing that then also failed. But I think these iterations happen, that people bring it all in house, and then they decide, wait a minute, what are we doing this for? And then
Yeah.
they come back around and go the other extreme. And then probably the truth is they probably should have just kept it steady and then did whatever made sense, instead of trying to go with some kind of philosophical angle on it.
I mean, somebody said to me recently, and it made a lot of sense, that like there is still a split fundamentally um, for people doing broadcast about like whether you are a broadcast company or a media company, or whether you're a technology company. And the technology companies tend to not be the ones with technical problems, um, but they might have content or rights issues. And the people that are media companies have plenty of content and don't have any rights issues, but seem to struggle with the technology piece. And like I was on a panel with Sean from McCarthy from YouTube TV, and he was saying like there's people who are just going to forever be like, you need to get this content from the satellite. And there are people who are like, why don't we just send it over SRT?
Yeah.
And the Venn diagram of where they overlap is pretty narrow still today, where people either come from a broadcast background and have very specific patterns that they would like to see on the way things work, or
Hmm.
people are new in technology, um, grew up in the technology era, as it were, and have very different specific patterns of like the way things should work and how things should look.
I think that sounds about right. But then it's funny you mentioned Sean at YouTube, and YouTube is like one of those unique companies where it didn't exist before. It's not like that was TV, right? Just put on the internet. This was a completely different paradigm. And I think that's probably those type of big things are the things that like make a big difference. And they tend to be, I don't know, are they technology first?
Oh, I mean, like
Perhaps.
YouTube is
Probably.
definitely like, because they're not the ones struggling. Like you're never going to hear YouTube be the ones being like, "Oh my God, how could we ever support both satellite and SRT at the same time? Oh
Exactly. They're
no,
just
it's
gonna
so
do
it's
it.
so hard."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're a technology company. Whereas the media companies are going to be like, "Oh, how could we could only ever send you one format. Like, what is this crazy? What is this
Yeah,
crazy talk
exactly.
about encoding it?
But I mean, I guess Netflix is kind of like that too, like where they created a new category, right? And you know, back to pivots, they did it twice, right? They created shipping CDs, got rid of
Yeah.
Blockbuster, and then they said, "Well, that's not going to last much longer. We better do this other streaming thing." And then they did that, and
I won't name the second company, but like the person who implanted this in my brain was
mhm,
consulting for another uh large
streaming
media company
entity.
with a
Yeah,
streaming thing who we may have already discussed on this call. Um
yeah,
and in reference to them building out their own infrastructure,
yeah,
the way he just said, he's just like, well, Netflix can because they're a technology company.
yeah.
These
They
people
started
can't.
that way.
Yeah, these people can't because fundamentally, even there's technology divisions, there's people who get it. As you go up the food chain, they're just not built to build technology. Um, and at some point that friction shows up. And I just think it's an interesting uh, split. And which, so I had that in my brain, right? Just talking about people building their own CDNs basically as like well, Netflix can and it works because they're a technology company. These people are trying and won't be successful because they're not a technology company at their core. Um, and then 3 months, and I heard that and I was like, that's an interesting take. And 3 months later, I heard, Sean be like, we have two types of people who, whose content we put on YouTube TV. Those who are like, here's an SRT feed, and those who are like, oh, gasp, I could never.
Yeah.
Um, and so it showed up again in that sort of way. Even though the future of that, that second company is tied to their ability to deliver it over
With
technology.
a technology, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, they're just never going to look and feel like a technology company from top to bottom. They can only have little parts of it.
You know, but it's interesting. They also don't need to be, which is also interesting because I mean, we might as well say the name of the company. It's Disney, right? I mean, that's like right, and
I mean,
it.
the company in question might have mouse ears involved. I can't say.
Well, I mean, let's say it is okay.
Yeah,
And that company started out making cartoons, right? And animated cartoons. And then that morphed into talk about pivots, man, theme parks, and then became a entertainment behemoth and making movies and then acquired Pixar. And then, you know, like it's just like this whole, you know, now they have ESPN and everything else. I mean, it's impressive, right? There's no denying the success of a company like that and the ability to pivot, but it's not rooted in technology, like you said. You know, they had to acquire those pieces like Bantech. They had to acquire Pixar. They had to kind of pick up those pieces to make it work. You know.
yeah, and there's just that underlying friction between the core and the new, I guess, if you will. And it's potentially a healthy tension. Um,
Yeah.
right? It's not to say there's anything wrong with it. It's just it looks different than a technology company built for video delivering video versus a company that started out drawing cartoons and operating theme parks to now delivering
That.
video. The
Yeah.
two paths look very different, and potentially it's one of those things where maybe just over a longer time horizon they do end up
Even out.
you know
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
In the
and end
same
up looking like they're
place.
merging.
Yeah.
But like uh again, a really interesting description of like build versus buy, and this
Hmm.
might even be related to the conversation around people doing on-prem versus cloud for events. A reframe, I think it was somebody at Microsoft said it was like, the question that you should be asking yourself is, what do we still want to own 25 years from now? And
Yeah.
that's where that's a different version of that, like technology company versus not. Like 25 years from now, presumably Netflix is still going to want to own all the patents around and run all the CDN footprint around OpenConnect.
Yep.
And whether it's Disney or Paramount or any of the play, like you look at it, and you're like, 25 years from now, are they really going to give a shit? They have a patent around HDR delivery over MP4? I don't know. For the reason that we talked about, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is like
It's not
they
in
came
their
from this.
DNA, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's also like a different way to maybe frame that. Like the people who are drawn to like that fully cloud solution
Mhm.
are just the ones going like, I don't need to own this. I want to own, my broadcast rights to, uh,
To sports,
you know,
whatever. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yep.
that's what I want to own. I don't want to own the technology. That's just a
Hmm.
means to an end. Uh, right.
No, I think
So,
I think that's really important. That companies really need to know what is it, what is their core, I guess, and what do they care about, and what do they want to? Because you can't do it all. I mean, there's a reason even CacheFly and Rep5 are working together, right? It's like we don't want to do it
mhm,
all either.
sure.
You guys are really good at building a global network of servers. Like we know nothing about that, and honestly, don't want to get into that, right?
And I
But
and I
yeah,
25 years from now, I don't want to own a video player.
yeah,
You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah,
Right? I don't
yeah,
want to own an encoding stack.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean that's where you find alignments and can get stuff done in the business world, I guess, is to find where do those win-win situations happen and overlaps that make sense, But it's interesting with this, having it on-prem versus platform as a service or service model. Um, we've also seen customers that simply because of the nature of their business or what they do, they can't use a service, right? So we have a lot of government stuff, like, or, and then that's high security. They need to keep it under wraps. They can't use just a third party service that's run by a, a private entity, right? It just doesn't make sense for them. And that's one of the advantages I think Red5 has is we actually had the flexibility to deploy where you want or pick the business model that works for you. Um, and it's fundamentally the same software. I mean, I've had this conversation a number of times. People are like, "Okay, yeah, yeah, I get that you have that on Red5 Pro, but does Red5 Cloud support it?" And I got to be like, "Look, the only difference is where we put it, right? It's the same software.
The cloud is just somebody else's computer.
Yeah, we're just running it for you." Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's also funny that people think of it as so different because actually it's not. To your point, these are all just computers running somewhere. Whether you're maintaining the computer or not, it's still on a computer running.
I don't know that anybody in your vertical in particular does it, but like the flip side of that coin is like there are two and a half companies I can think of off the top of my head where like once you're on the cloud version, it's hard to go to on-prem. So like, oh, the on-prem version doesn't have that feature.
Oh yeah.
So you're gonna have to keep paying us the cloud tax and the overhead. But thank you for thank you for thinking of migrating back to on-prem. But we're really not going to let you do that.
I guess we play a little bit of that game, but not too much. You know what I mean? It's more of a convenience thing than anything. Like if you got the DevOps team to set it up, you can set up exactly what we built in Redpot Cloud, but it does take a decent amount of effort.
Right.
Um, and the
And do
same
you want
goes
to
with
own
our.
that 25 years from now? Right.
Well,
That's
that's
the
the real question, right? But also, Red 5 open source is still the core of Red 5 Pro and Red 5 Cloud too, and people take that and make it their own and build like Ant Media. They're built all
Mhm.
100% on our open source stack, and they're a competitor of ours, which I think is pretty interesting and neat, in its own way.
Yeah.
Um, but they chose to, yeah, okay, we're gonna own all that stuff. We're gonna take it on and make it happen.
Sort of. Sort of. They chose to not want to have to develop. They don't want to own all the stuff the open source one did.
That's
Right.
right. Yeah,
Yeah. They
there's
wanted to own the
definitely,
wrapper app.
yeah, there's shades of gray about this stuff and different levels of where you want to draw the line. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Um, let's geek out a bit. You so more than me um, on what Red 5 open source is built upon, and what obviously Pro and Cloud do as well. Which is, you said WebRTC um,
Mhm.
is probably what most people what comes to mind, or at least came to mind as of 6 months ago. Um, in a world where everybody's really excited about MOQ and has no production use cases yet about MOQ, Where are we in that sort of life cycle, and where does WebRTC fit?
Yeah, really good question. Um, Doing things like what we're doing on this webinar right now, this is happening over WebRTC right now, right? And I don't see this use case going away very quickly, mainly because MOQ doesn't properly do echo cancellation. A lot of the things that are built into the WebRTC stack, which are just made for video calls, right? And so that's like one use case that I don't think is going to be replaced by MOQ, at least not anytime soon. Now that said, and the openmock.org that we're in, the consortium, Cisco's in that, and they're making sure that WebEx uses mock as the core. And so they're having to solve a whole bunch of problems behind it to make it sure that that happens. And so, yeah, I think you fast forward a little bit into the future, maybe that is the better choice. Um, but in terms of the timeline, I think we're in the, like, what is it? What's that famous book where it's the crossing the chasm? You know what I'm talking about?
Hmm.
Where
Yep.
you go through this hype phase and then it goes and there's the chasm and before it becomes a real thing. We're totally
Yep.
on the hype phase of mock right now, right? We're gonna have like a
So, and for
yeah,
those who don't know where the chasm is, the
yeah,
chasm is like early adopters,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like you get to the early adopters phase, and then I
Hmm.
forget what they call it after early adopters, but
I
the
think
early
the
adopters are easy.
disillusionment or some weird term like that. I forget what it is too, but yeah,
Yeah, but the early adopters will adopt anything, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it doesn't matter. They're just like, this is great, this is new, I want to play with it, it's exciting.
yeah, yeah.
I think if pragmatists are the
Hmm.
where the chasm is, right? So you've got the early adopters who are like, this is great, this is the future, rah rah rah, let's go. And then you have the pragmatists being like, oh wait, not so fast. Let's see how this shakes out.
That's right. And I think we're at that stage right now. Um, but all of these technology, I guess this is like a technology cycle, right?
Hmm.
And what I've seen, having done this for a while, is they've accelerated. The speed at which they happen has gone up. So you go through the same phases, but it's like now going like faster and faster and faster. It's kind of like the same rule around processors, right? That they were just going to keep getting exponentially better and better. Kind of a similar thing is happening across the board with technology. Um,
What makes that what makes that happen, do you think, right now?
Variety of things like cloud certainly was a big one. So the time it took to deploy something is no longer a big one. You can just spin up services on demand and everything else. And then AI is the logical next piece of that, right? Just the time it takes to build a POC or like some kind of product is like you can do it overnight, like done. Next day you can launch something. And I think that stuff is accelerating to the point where, yeah, I don't think that's going to be the barrier soon. Um, Having to spend all this time going through development and the standard cycles are just going to be accelerated.
How much room do you think there is with where we're at in AI? Not to date the episode in particular, but with where
Hmm.
AI is at today, how much more room is there to make these cycles go faster? Like where are we relative to the speed of light on the that crossing the chasm cycle?
Man, that's a tough question. I wish I could predict the future and know the answer, but if I had to
It seems to me
guess,
like we're pretty close. Uh,
we're pretty darn close. Yeah, but
yeah.
that said, it's only recently that like Claude Code has gotten good enough to actually look at an entire
Cool.
code base of a giant, you know, um, repository of code and then figure out what's going on with it. Think about that. Like 6 months ago, even it was not doing its job. Now it can do this and like write stuff that makes a lot of sense. Still got to verify it and look through it, but I'm kind of blown away at like the productivity gains you can get from this kind of stuff.
Hmm. I think to me the most interesting development has been QUIC itself.
Yeah.
So I sort of compare it versus IPv6 and go, okay. So my old joke, literally 25 years ago when we started CacheFly, um, people would say, um, aren't you worried about getting disrupted or whatever that looked like? And I remember, and my throwaway joke line was like, there's really only two things that could invalidate, needing a CDN. One is getting everybody on the internet to change protocols, and two is figuring out how to transfer data faster than the speed of light. One of them's impossible, so it'll come down to whether we can figure out how to go faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
And yet, here we are talking about some high percentage of people, 70-80% of people probably today, being able to talk a different protocol. Now, granted, didn't invalidate CDNs, and it didn't totally change the TCP. Really, it's still a windowing protocol, and latency is still a large blocker for limiting throughput. We just fixed it at the head of line problem, but we have 4 billion computers speaking a new protocol that didn't exist 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how fast that happened. Yeah.
That's to me was, notwithstanding that the AI stuff is coming, but like the adoption of an end user capable protocol being picked up, and really the answer is like IPv6 is IETF, and QUIC is a whole bunch of
QUIC
vendors.
is Google basically. Yeah, he drove
Yeah.
that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. QUIC is a commercial entity going, I need this, and I'm going to
Yeah.
push it.
Mhm.
And draw
Well,
your own
Google-
conclusions about the browser monopoly.
Well, it's
why
interesting,
that's possible.
Yeah, speaking of giant companies, right? We already talked about YouTube, which is owned by Google, right? But or Alphabet, I guess is the way they call it now. But it is pretty interesting that I think they were in a unique position to be able to create QUIC because they had the vast majority of the users on the internet using their browser. So that made it pretty easy to switch over to a new protocol. And then everybody's using their search engine. So that was a good start for it. So they just speed up that traffic right on the search engine.
Yeah.
And then it's already in the browser. So then other sites start picking it up and start using that technology. And then, of course, they have YouTube, which starts delivering video over it. And then, it starts getting pretty interesting pretty quickly,
And here's the mental model question for this is like, where would LLMs be if rather than OpenAI, Claude, and Gemini, if there was an IETF group working on language models, where would we be, what would that look like, right? And I have to feel like it would look very different in the same way that, IPv6 is still chugging along. So like there, and incidentally, this will tie into the Red 5 thing, but incidentally, the way Google did it is they said, we're not waiting for the IETF. What are you, crazy?
That's right. Yeah.
We're gonna push our own version, and eventually, when we all agree on what the standard will be, we'll roll that out.
That's exactly right. And then, that's been our philosophy all along. It was the same with RTMP. We didn't need a spec for that. We're just like, Flash does this thing. Flash is ubiquitous. It's out there all over the place. How do we get that to work? And we did it, right? And so that was a very pragmatic approach. Eventually, the RTMP spec got released by Adobe, and then it kind of became a standard, I guess. And then now there's the enhanced RTMP, many, many years into the future, which is like the official spec of it. Honestly, we're taking the same approach with MOQ, and that's why it's so exciting working with you guys. That we even just just yesterday, right, Matt? You guys updated your CDN to support a rogue header to be able to set a TTL. That's not to standard, but so what? It's sort of like, let's get this thing to work. Let's solve the actual problems that are out there, and then we'll come back to hey, this is a standard. There's interoperability and everything else. Um, so I think it's a balancing act, right? To your point about LLMs, if would we have this level of innovation if it were just an IETF, like large language model working group? No, probably not. But also, all the research for that, especially with open AI, was actually a bunch of scholars, right? And academia coming together with a real, like, highfalutin, I guess, non-commercial agenda, right? Of course, then they kind of flipped, right? They're like, let's go all commercial on this.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, we can make money on this thing, so yeah, we should do that. Um, but I do think it's a balancing act, right? There's a lot of value in the standardization of this stuff. That's why I like working in this open mock group, because you got all these competing companies that are going to be like, okay, we just don't want to write the same thing over and over again ourselves. Let's come together, make this a standard that works and has interoperability. And then that's just going to make the whole thing go faster. All the ships
Yeah.
rise, that kind of concept, right? So,
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, my question, uh, you know, that is not a knock on the IETF. That is exactly how a standardization process needs to run. Um,
right.
it's more just the, um, how does a standardization process run compared to innovation, right? And like, there's a balancing act between first, I think, the answer has to be almost by definition of the words. First we innovate, then we standardize. We can't first we standardize, then we innovate. Is a little, the the innovation part is really not much innovation at that point.
Yeah. Cart before the horse, right? It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, no, that's right. And yeah, I mean, that's why it's interesting what we as CacheFly and Red5 are doing on the mock thing is that's our goal, right? It was we want to have something people can use today. Yes, it runs over quick. It is media over quick, and then we're picking one of the standards, like iterations of it. Right now, it's set at 16, but it's not a full IETF spec at this point, and that's fine. You know what I mean? We're going to make it work for users. It'll be available in production. A lot of this stuff isn't standardized in terms of like how to do ABR switching, how to do ad stitching, all of this stuff. We're going to have to roll our own for a while until those become standardized, and then we'll switch over to it. But the beauty of this is coming back to AI. The speed at which we can do those updates now is remarkable too. It's not like it's going to take us new spec comes out, have Claude Code look at it, tell us what we might need to do, and then you're like, okay, we'll do those things. Like it's not that hard anymore.
when you're looking for answers,
Mhm.
is your first ask to the team and your second ask to Claude to verify, or is your first ask to Claude and then your second for the team to verify?
Probably ask the team first, honestly, because I think I trust the human beings more and the experience, and then all of us probably are using AI of some sort to figure it out, right, and verify our assumptions and everything else. But look, this is where the limitations of LLMs come in, right? They can only use what we've produced today. So it's not it'll tell you what the um the highest level of like implementation of a certain thing, but it's not going to come up with what that next thing is, right? And so that's where the big difference is. Like we still have to come up with a new technology or what it's at least for now. Maybe these things will get good enough to do that, but right now it doesn't stand to that point.
Yeah.
It can tell you what the best implementation is for a set of problems, and um, but they're all known things, right? It's not like it's coming up with a new way of doing something.
Right. And I mean, maybe related to that, um, what innovations do you think are going to be the most impactful inside mock compared to, say, what's available today if you're trying to implement that with WebRTC, and or if you're trying to do something at scale with, say HLS, like where in a world where we're somewhat reinventing the wheel,
Mm.
what are we changing about the wheel that's actually really going to be impactful for people?
It's a good question, and I think one of the things is that WebRTC, to scale it, was a little bit of a complete hack, for lack of a better term, right?
Choose your words carefully. This is a family program.
Yeah, but it's true, right? We had to use like DTLS, make the edges become the other peer in the architecture, and then it's like it does this ICE negotiation, and boom, now they're connected and can stream. The nice thing about MOQ is you don't have to do it that way. You've got HTTP3. You can do the same kind of delivery model we've been doing with HLS or whatever. But and then of course I think HLS is probably the biggest hack out there, right? Is just taking requests and doing them over and over again and sending tiny segments of video to put it together. But I guess this is an opportunity to kind of, I guess, do it right in a way. You know what I mean? We've got these like the QUIC protocol being like a nice low level layer that we can do this on, and then not have to do fetching segment files and like all of that stuff in the same way. We don't have to do this crazy ICE negotiation. Like it just feels like it's being thought out and done in a way that's logical as opposed to like that's the way we have to do it just to get this done, you know?
Does your gut tell you today that um, this is something that's going to be very like broadcast forward, or
Mm.
are we quickly going to see something resembling more traditional linear VOD type catalog? I shouldn't say linear, VOD sort of deep catalog, also finding ways to ride the new wave, or is that still going to be an HLS or Dash kind of thing?
I mean, it's tough to tell, but the it's definitely gonna start with live content and where interactivity matters or where you don't want spoilers or where you want things to sync with, live data.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's the start of it. Uh, but, that said, all of those use cases often have recordings associated with them. They also have the concept of, like, DVR style scrubbing going back in time and, like, seeking and all of that stuff, so then all of a sudden you're playing in that territory anyway.
Hmm.
Um, whether Netflix would take QUIC and send all their videos over it, I don't know. I mean, maybe like media over QUIC for a standard VOD service. I could see advantages of doing it that way. Um, but the advantages currently don't outweigh the cost of redoing everything, right? So that we would have to have a pretty compelling reason to do so. And I think it's going to be that kind of in between state where you want that DVR stuff with the live, where it's truly real time. I think that's where we're going to start to see, okay, we've already built this thing, so now we can use it for the VOD content, and maybe then at that point it'll become the de facto standard for it.
Yeah, it'll be probably people doing greenfield builds as opposed to people that have infrastructure today that is ostensibly working. Depends who you ask, probably. But
Exactly, and we don't even need to go there because yeah, a lot of this stuff is taped together with duct tape and made to work, and yeah, I think
yeah,
anything at huge scale is probably like that, right? A little bit under the covers, you don't really want to see it, but
no, but
yeah,
that's the way it's always been, right?
yeah, hmm
And maybe going as a callback, maybe that is it's not really how it looks in broadcast necessarily, right? So that is the technology versus broadcast, right? It's on the technology side, everybody's uh, for an industry that basically invented the word kludge, uh, that's the nature of the beast, right? It's tough to still apply AI to your traditional broadcast architecture. Uh,
yeah.
you can't. Claude's not gonna rewrite the firmware on any of your boxes or do anything on the satellites or.
That's right. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Yep.
Yeah. All right. And what else? MOQ is obviously top of mind right now. What else in terms of technologies and things that are coming sort of around the corner are
Mhm.
exciting to you? What else sets your toe a tapping these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny. We've been doing a lot of stuff with AI as well, on video, uh, or visual language models, I guess is what it's called, right? And using that to detect things in the scenes, doing things uh, like what is happening right now. A lot of this is like surveillance kind of stuff, detection of like, oh, there's something bad happening in the scene, alert police to it, or there's guy in a uh, flipping the bird on a broadcast. Right now we have people sitting there watching this stuff and then cutting it off, like
Yeah.
blurring it out, and then 10 seconds later it goes out. I think a lot of those problems are going to be solved with AI in an interesting way. There's some other ones we're working on that I don't really want to talk about yet, at least not on a podcast.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
Mystery, suspense.
But yeah, it's some very cool stuff that we're doing around a visual language model stuff.
Yeah.
But I also see people innovating on kind of a codec side, and then I think predictive analysis and trying to like could do better compression, better and faster. What do you call it? Transcoding.
Hmm.
Um, there's a few of those, like, NetInt has been one that's kind of taken a hardware approach to that, which I think is interesting. And then there's Visionular, which is a really hard one to pronounce, but pretty neat company, that's kind of taking a way of compressing video that's uh, taking the type of content that's going to be out, creating an algorithm which then compresses it, but much better and faster, and then lowers the bit rate and keeps the quality up. I see a lot of those kind of companies that are out there doing pretty neat stuff. Um, I think drone streaming is also a really interesting one. We do a lot of work in that space, and I think the regulations around drones is changing, at least in the U.S., but also elsewhere, where you're going to see more of these use cases of little things flying around. They need video for that, and doing interesting things with it. Hopefully, not too much Big Brother stuff, but more like actual useful stuff.
Yeah. It's funny. Already, on a day to day basis, I'm always thinking about what AI thing, and I was the least supportive AI person 2 years ago. Um, and now I was on vacation last week, and I remember uh, thinking we were at like a restaurant up on a cliff, and water where we were was super clear, and I was just like, oh, we should set up a camera here and have an AI thing that detects when there's a stingray or a turtle or something going into the beach, and it can notify the beach staff to tell everybody like, oh, there's gonna be a turtle swimming by or whatever. Like just something that would be like you would never be like, you know what we need? We need to hire a person who's going to stand here for 8 hours and watch for turtles. And when they do, they're going to radio the beach. That model would never make sense. But all of a sudden, it's like in a world where this thing could identify, a couple of patterns swimming through the ocean, all of a sudden you could have a really cool experience for everybody who's, at this place. And things like that, I think are just uh, maybe uh, what I think would be cool on an AI standpoint. It's not like how do we reinvent the wheel or what can we, do that, more efficiently, whatever. Just like things that financially or economically you wouldn't think of as like a utility all of a sudden become really interesting, I think.
I 100% agree that it's going to help us enhance the real world, right? Not just a virtual world. And
Yeah.
I think that's the positive side of it, right? And I think there's a lot of that. It's funny because I started like as a musician, I still play out, and some of my musicians friends are all like, What do you think about AI? Like, is it gonna go and take my job?" And like, I'm like, I don't really think so, because even though it's the AI for producing music is almost as good now, right? You almost can't tell. It sort of doesn't matter because people want to see live human beings like actually perform. And I think there's going to be sort of like I wouldn't say backlash, but like a reaction to the AI stuff where you want that. You want to go into a club and like see people and like there's no, they're playing actual instruments and there's no like computers doing this stuff. I just think that that's something that people are never going to give up. They're going to want that. And your turtle example is a perfect example of how AI could enhance something which is actually just the natural world.
Hmm.
And people playing music together and like creating a feel, especially in like stuff like jazz. It's like you can't replicate that in the same way. It might
Hmm.
sound exactly the same if you're listening to it on like Spotify or something, but it's I think there's something more visceral to it, almost spiritual, if you will.
Well, I mean, anybody who's been to uh, see live music or even a live performance of any kind with an audience, right? Whether that's a
Mhm.
play, whether that's music, whether that's whatever.
Yeah,
Anybody who doesn't think there's a different energy that's created in that space, is either not paying attention or is just doesn't have that part of their brain, right? Because
yeah.
like
So far
there
on
is
the spectrum that they would never get it anyway.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah, like because
yeah.
anybody who's
Yeah.
ever been there,
Mhm.
right? Like listening, listening in your bedroom to Taylor Swift is cool,
Yeah.
but that has nothing to do with going to a Taylor Swift concert, right? Like those are on the grand experiences, those are polar opposites. Um,
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
and so like I think with music in particular, that live component, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's like a that part can never be replaced. Um, and I also can't see 30,000 people showing up to a venue to watch a computer play through the speakers. But then
You never
again,
know.
there's a lot of people that go watch a DJ, play
I mean
pre-recorded music.
I think all are gonna be possible, right? It's very well possible that we're gonna have this most amazing robot band that everybody wants to go see, which is completely AI, and they're
Chuck
and
E.
they're freaking
Cheese.
robots, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
Chuck E. Cheese next level, but I
yeah,
I could see that happening, and I might even go to that. It sounds kinda entertaining if it was done right, you know
right.
what I mean? So,
Yeah,
uh, I think it's a new brave world where we just don't know. That's the exciting part of it, of course, too. Um,
yeah, and like especially with how fast things have progressed in the last 6 months, I get that AI is has a potential to be different, but like one of my examples I used with music was like musicianship already died. I was told,
it's
in
so
19 in
true.
19 as soon as Pro Tools came out,
Yeah.
there's going to be no more musicians and no more engineers because Pro Tools came out. Right as soon as it went digital, no, there was no humans were no longer needed anyway. And
Yeah.
turns out there's just as many humans creating music today, and there's just as many engineers engineering music today using Pro Tools instead of tape. Um, so, uh, and mathematically, there's probably more doing both.
Yeah, I do think that there's something with the business model though, like in music, that it did make it not viable, right? Like to make money as a musician. Um, groups like Spotify are a perfect example of that, where it's just they give you such small, minuscule amount of the share that it's like you're not making money that way.
Not like those lucrative record companies who are taking care of their artists.
Hey, it was slightly better. It was slightly better, you know what I mean? But it's just taken to the extreme. And I guess, AI could be seen as like another layer on top of that. But that said, I think where the innovation happens is thinking outside the box. Not saying that it's going to follow that path necessarily. Maybe there's something else that could be generated because of this new technology that's going to make it better.
Create a new instrument that
Sure.
humans can play.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's the stuff that is some sort of second order consequence to it all, right? Everybody's so focused on the impact of the work. Everybody's worried about being displaced, and there's, again, I'm willing to concede now in a way that I didn't 18 months ago that there's AI potentially has the chance to be different, but
Yeah.
at least on me, the irony is not lost that all these people whose jobs only exist because of either A, the microchip, B, the internet, or C, the mobile phone, are so worried about this new technology displacing them, that there's a chance that in fact it'll just be like the microchip, and it'll just be like the internet, and it'll just be like a mobile phone, and it'll just create more opportunities for people in the way that those did. We just don't know what they are yet.
Yeah, that's right. Or it'll free us up to not do the menial stuff, I think that's true
Absolutely.
with coding right now. It's like, who wants to go write the same algorithm over and over again, like just because you need to, right? Like,
Yeah. Well,
let's have AI
here's
write
a
that thing, like.
here's a weird real world one is I have
Mhm.
seen now, this isn't really AI per se, but I think the analogy holds, which is I have seen now probably 15 to 20 golf courses that now have either autonomous mowers
Mm.
or autonomous ball pickers on the driving range that go around and pick up the balls. And I have asked the same question to every single golf course, to either the superintendent, the director of golf, somebody that works there every time. And I've said, so how much have you saved on labor?
What is the
And
answer to that?
every single person says nothing. We have just as many people as when we started, but they're off doing different things now, right? So now
Yeah.
that the robot mowers are just
Now they
cutting the
just have
grass.
nicer lawns, right? I mean, that's basically it. Nicer
That's it.
grass, right? Yeah.
Now they're sending people around to hand cut around sprinkler heads, or the golf course is now more beautiful,
Yeah.
because it frees up the humans to not just go forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, but to work on the flower beds, or work on, like I said, hand cutting with
Yeah.
scissors around sprinkler heads or wherever. So
I think that's right, and it's the same in the software world right now, right? We don't have to go do all this menial stuff. We can think about, oh, what actual feature do we need? Like what makes more sense? What would be a better UI? What would be, not having to do all the menial stuff, in the same way. And this is all so new. I mean, that's what's crazy about it is like that wasn't even possible 3 to 6 months ago.
and at least now, when I look at all the you know changes in the way people are staffing around AI, it still has nothing to do with AI. Like at this very moment, this is just people going, now's a good time to cut some of the
Oh yeah.
waste that we probably have, and
It's
we
a
can
good
blame it on
way to
AI.
talk. Good way to talk to the stock market, right? It's like, yeah, this
Exactly.
is why we're doing it.
It's like
Yeah,
it turns out we didn't need 17,000 engineers to write this, to maintain this software program or whatever. But in 2 or 3 years, then maybe we'll actually see the impact of AI on the workforce. But right now, it's just people going. The fact that AI showed up is not the thing that made Oracle or Microsoft or anybody realize that
hmm
275,000 employees might be a touch too much. Like the AI hasn't impacted that yet. I don't think. I think that's in 2 or 3 years when potentially that might be the change. But I still see whatever the computer equivalent of the headcount's going to be the same. They're just going to be working on different stuff now, ostensibly stuff that has a higher return than mowing the lawn.
yeah, totally.
I don't know if that's a good place to leave it, but that feels like a good place to leave it. Do you have any closing thoughts on where we're at with video as a one of the questions I frequently ask people in the video world is, broadcast has been around now for coming up on 100 years pretty soon, at
Yeah,
least in the way that we know it today. And in that sense, I still think all the streaming stuff is pretty much in its infancy in the grand scale of human endeavors. Um, how different do you see things looking say 5 years from now versus where we are today in terms of the way people consume content?
I mean, I think it's a multi-pronged situation. Like you're still going to have people watching standard VOD, like movies, right? That's not going to change. People are still going to watch series like, TV shows and Netflix series and stuff like that too. There's still going to be live sports. But I think there is going to be some emerging new stuff that hasn't happened before. And that's more that interactive thing. I know people have been predicting interactive TV for ages, but I think we're at a point now where this is all possible. And we're going to see things like online game shows where it pulls in the audience from their phone into the show. And then they're like this, morphed thing that's really interesting, And I think AI is going to be a big part of that too, like kind of creating stuff on the fly. Also being able to produce things in a way that you weren't able to do before, creating scenes around, like it's just somebody joining from their like living room. All of a sudden, we could knock out the background in a way that makes them look like they're part of the show on the show, like without using like AI to do that kind of work. It would have been pretty much impossible. But now I think we're at a point where we can do that. And so I think we're going to see stuff emerging where interactivity, the latency to live video has got to be really low for massive scale. So I think this is where MOQ really comes in and helps. But then, that two-way interactivity and pulling in a caller. So a lot like radio, like, right? Hey, we'll take the next caller now. But imagine doing that with video, but it's not just a talking head in a block, right? Or like a square going on the screen. I mean, that's the obvious, like easy way to do it today. But what if that person actually looked like they were on the set in there, and they're still talking and still using their phone to do that? I think this is where we're going with it. It's a little bit like, all the hype around the metaverse a while back.
Mhm.
But I don't think people wanted to wear those like big, headsets and goggles, and like it's just not going to happen, right? But if you could
Yeah,
create a similar experience without doing that, I think people would be into it.
for sure.
Hopefully, I'm making a bit of sense here, but I think that things like that are on the horizon, and I can't obviously predict it, right? That's also the fun part. I want to help make the technology for other people to figure out. Oh, I had this idea. Maybe I can put it together now. So
Mm, awesome. Well, Chris, thank you for your time.
yeah, thank
I
you.
hope I hope to see you again soon, which I'm sure I will. And yeah, for those who are interested in what we're doing together with MOQ, you can check out either the CacheFly website or the Red 5 website. We'll be doing a lot of integration work moving forward to make MOQ a reality for people in the real world in production. And I know we're both excited about it.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see what people build with the stuff that we're putting out there. So
Yeah,
awesome, Matt.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
This is different, another round, so much more to talk about. Gonna aim to satisfy with help from CacheFly. Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast. The Anycast podcast, brought to you by CacheFly.